Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, you've probably already seen the buzz around the brand new update for Final Fantasy Tactics version 1.3.0. And yeah, this one's an interesting little package. It might not look massive on paper, but once you actually get into it, there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than the short patch notes might suggest. If you're a longtime fan of the series, or maybe you've just jumped into the remastered version, you'll definitely want to know what's changed, what it means for your team, and why this small update actually matters more than it seems at first glance. So let's talk about it, because Final Fantasy Tactics isn't just any strategy game. It's one of those timeless tactical RPGs that keeps pulling people back decade after decade. The story, the gameplay systems, that perfect mix of chess-like combat and emotional storytelling, it's the reason so many players have spent countless hours rethinking formations, testing job combinations, and perfecting strategies for every map. And when the remastered version, the Ivalice Chronicles, hit, it gave both new and returning fans the perfect excuse to step back into that world. But now, with this update, it feels like Square Enix is quietly fine-tuning things, shaping the experience just a bit closer to how it was always meant to feel. The first big piece of this update focuses on what they're calling Enhanced Mode, specifically for Squire Mode battles. Now, for anyone who's still figuring out what all these modes mean, let's clear that up for a second. Enhanced Mode is the slightly modernized experience, balanced, polished, and designed to feel fresh for current players, while Classic Mode is a faithful recreation of the original game's mechanics with very minimal tampering. The developers made both modes so players could choose. Do you want nostalgia as it was, or nostalgia with a few quality of life improvements? With this update, Enhanced Mode, and particularly Squire Mode, got a balance pass, and that's actually a big deal. If you've ever started a new file and gone through those early battles, you know how deceptively tricky they can be. Squire Mode is supposed to ease players in, but let's be real, it's never been easy. You can still get your squad wiped if you underestimate the enemy positioning or forget to consider terrain advantages. What this patch seems to do is smooth out some of those early spikes while making the learning curve feel more natural. It doesn't strip away the challenge, though, it just refines it. Think of it like this. Early game tactics used to hit you with moments that felt unfair rather than hard. You'd go into a battle, the enemy units would somehow outnumber or outpace you, and before you could even adapt, half your party was face down on the battlefield. That might have worked back in the late 90s when players expected trial and error, but for newer audiences, especially those jumping into the remaster, it could feel punishing in the wrong way. The new balance tweaks help shift the difficulty towards something that rewards strategy rather than punishing inexperience. It's a small but meaningful difference, and you can really feel it in the flow of those first few encounters. Now, what's really cool here is that Square Enix didn't mess with the essence of those fights. The patch doesn't change who you fight or where. It just adjusts stats, AI decision-making, and maybe a few subtle tweaks to how enemies react to your party composition. That's the kind of fine-tuning that shows the devs are paying attention. It's not about reinventing the game. It's about honoring what worked and gently improving what didn't. And honestly, that's something fans have wanted for a long time. Minor fixes that respect the legacy. Outside of those balance changes, the update also makes adjustments that affect both enhanced and classic modes. One of the more understated but surprisingly impactful changes involves sound effects. Yeah, I know. Sound effects might not sound like the kind of thing that deserves a mention in a patch note, but in a game like Final Fantasy Tactics, where the soundscape helps define the atmosphere of every single turn, even small audio tweaks make a difference. For example, a sword strike or spell cast might not have felt quite right before, either too quiet, too harsh, or maybe mismatched with the animation. The devs didn't go into full detail about which sounds were changed, but players who've tested the patch are already noticing improvements in clarity and mix balance. Footsteps, weapon clashes, and spell cues all feel cleaner, and that helps give the battlefield a more dynamic feel. It's subtle, but when you're spending hours planning moves and listening to that soundscape in the background, it adds a layer of polish that makes the experience feel more complete. Alongside those changes, there's also a fix in Classic Mode related to errand reports. Now, if you've played through Classic Mode recently, you probably ran into a few little quirks, like errands not updating correctly or certain results displaying incorrectly. These reports are one of those small features that can be easy to overlook, but they add so much flavor to the world. You send a character off to handle some side task, they come back with a story, and it makes Ivalice feel alive. Having those bugs cleaned up is just one of those quiet, necessary steps toward making the remaster feel stable and consistent. But here's where things get even more interesting. When people hear Final Fantasy Tactics 1.3, they often think of something totally different. Long before this official update existed, there was a legendary fan-made mod known as Final Fantasy Tactics 1.3, and that thing was infamous in the community. It completely overhauled the original PlayStation version of the game, rebalancing every job, reworking enemy AI, and cranking the difficulty way up. It wasn't just a tweak, it was a full reimagining, the kind of mod that turned tactics into a hardcore chess match that only the most dedicated fans could conquer. For a long time, if you said FFT 1.3, people would immediately think of that brutal version, the one that punished every mistake and forced you to rethink everything you thought you knew about the game. It's kind of poetic that the official remaster update shares the same number, even if it's just coincidence, because the spirit of refinement, challenge, and respect for the original DNA runs through both. But make no mistake, this official update isn't that kind of overhaul. It's more of a refinement of what's already great, rather than a reinvention meant to test your patience. Still, you can't ignore how that fan mod laid the groundwork for how the community looks at this game. It proved that Final Fantasy Tactics could be rebalanced and reinterpreted without losing its soul. And now, years later, the official devs seem to be doing that same thing, just in a far more polished, accessible way. It's kind of like seeing the legacy of the mod community live on within the official product, even if indirectly. So, where does that leave us as players? Well, this update might not be the kind that makes headlines or completely changes the meta, but it does something just as important. It shows that Square Enix is paying attention. They're not treating this remaster like a one-and-done nostalgia product. They're actually listening, adjusting, and giving it care after release. For a series that's as beloved and as intricate as Final Fantasy Tactics, that kind of attention means everything. If you've already played through Classic Mode, this might be a good reason to start a new run in Enhanced Mode, just to feel how those Squire Mode tweaks play out in practice. Try out a few early battles, Raph, see how the pacing feels, how enemies react. It might surprise you how much smoother it feels without losing that signature tactical tension. And if you've been on the fence about jumping into the remaster at all, this patch makes now a great time to start. There's also this unspoken hope among fans that these kinds of updates could lead to even more improvements down the road. Maybe we'll see future patches that adjust job balance, introduce optional difficulty modes, or expand on multiplayer functionality. The foundation is already strong, but patches like this keep the conversation alive, keep the community engaged, and make players feel like the game's future is active rather than archived. At the same time, it's worth recognizing how this update fits into the broader story of Tactics as a whole. This isn't just another entry in the Final Fantasy series. It's a cornerstone of the tactical RPG genre. When you adjust even small details like balance curves or sound timing, you're not just tweaking numbers, you're shaping how new generations experience the game. A lot of people who are playing the Ivalice Chronicles might never have touched the original PS1 release or the PSP War of the Lions version. For them, this remaster is their first exposure, and it needs to feel cohesive, fair, and alive. This update contributes to that. And it's kind of comforting in a way. So many remasters get released and then just fade away after launch, but seeing one of the most respected tactical games still getting post-release support more than 2 decades after its original debut, it says something about how timeless this game really is. It's not just nostalgia, it's a testament to how well it was built in the first place. You can patch a game 1,000 times, but if the foundation isn't strong, those patches don't mean much.